Right. Coach Helen for YouFit Studio, talking about what makes you or can make you unstoppable. Now, what does that mean definition wise? Because you know, I like to define what the heck I'm talking about before I start spewing stuff at you. Yeah, Kate's got 12,000. Yeah, Kate, I'm going to get there. By definition, to be unstoppable is to be impossible to stop or prevent. Now, how does this relate to health and fitness or losing weight? Well, to some degree, there has to be a mechanism where you're constantly moving forward in some shape or form. If that's not the loss of weight, just understanding of yourself, your mindset, etc. Other measures, which I've talked about before, that may not be the scales, right? Being unstoppable means that you are moving forwards or forever moving forwards, either mentally or physically, towards your goals. So something unstoppable is, to become an unstoppable force, is almost to say, actually, I'm owning my stuff, not the naughty word. And I will get to what I need to get to, because nothing is going to get in my way, one way or another. It means it's about almost making yourself bulletproof. It doesn't mean you don't take the bullet, right? It just means it bounces off. So, to become bulletproof is to ensure that you get your goal. Doing everything, right? So I wrote, doing everything that is within your power to get to your goal, and, right, not but, and recognizing what is not within your power. I thought it was a good line for me. I made that one myself. So, let me repeat it because it's so good. Means that you'll get your goal doing everything that was within your power and recognizing what is not in your power, right? That is truly to become bulletproof, because it means you don't dwell on stuff that you know you can't control, that isn't in your sphere of influence. If you remember, I talked about that. Recognize what isn't in your sphere of influence, then actually focus on what you can control. Makes you unstoppable, because you can do everything within your power to get to that goal and not waste your time on stuff that you know you can't change. Quite powerful stuff, right? So I'm going to go through a couple of these things now. It goes without saying, not everybody can do all of these, right? Circumstantially or environmentally or mentally, right? It may be a combination, maybe one, it may be none, it may be something you need to have a think about yourself, right? But I'm going to go through some of these things just to see if any of this resonates with you. And the important thing is that you actually try, right? I think that's the important thing about most things in life. The important thing is to actually try and get yourself into the mindset of being unstoppable. Because a bit like I talked about identity, if you identify as an unstoppable person, what does that mean? It means that all your beliefs, all your habits, all your behaviours will fall underneath that belief you're an unstoppable person, right? If you actually tell yourself that and start to believe it, my God, there's nothing you can't achieve, right? Literally, because you become unstoppable. So here we go. Point. Roll my sleeves up. It's that important. Right, it's that important. I've got to roll the sleeves up. And point number one, okay? Don't think, know, and act. Right? What does that mean, Helen? Point number one about becoming unstoppable towards your goal. Don't think, know, and act. And part of that is to do with knowing, right? Knowing that you have fear, that you have past experience, that you have belief systems, can actually result in, I think we've all been there, when you overthink. You overthink a situation and don't act, right? And what's happens at that point is someone is often stopped in their tracks when it comes to achieving a goal or achieving weight loss. They overthink it to the point where actually they do nothing. Now, I'm probably going to do a live on that as well. In fact, I might have already planned one in. There is a consequence of doing nothing. All right, if you're coming unstoppable, you're always moving forward, right? The thing is that often people are stopped in their tracks because they're overthinking it. They're thinking about all the worst case scenarios, all the fears, all the things that go badly wrong. And in that, they're not recognizing there's a consequence. It's about to bite them in the behind. Again, not swearing. Doing my best. The thing is about that consequence is that we're not looking at it because it's coming up from behind us. So there are consequences of not acting. So often, right, it's appropriate to act, right? I'm not saying act carelessly. What I'm saying is that know that you're scared, know you have previous experience. The important thing is you take action, because no action has its own consequences. If you fear the actions of doing something, you won't be getting anywhere, right? Point number one, do it. Okay, here's a good one. Always be prepared. Oh, it's like, what's that, girl? That was one of them, innit? I'm doing this. There it is, I'm doing. So the Girl Guides or Scouts will probably both, or Brownies. Always be prepared. Right? The only security we've got about change is that it's always going to happen. Now, what will happen is, and we've probably seen this and recognised this either in ourselves or in people around us over the last 12 months. Relax isn't the right word, complacency might not be the right word, but there's an element where people settle into a routine and think that's it. Oh, this is how it's going to be now. Right, this is how it's going to be for the foreseeable future. I do not want to be prepared for any change. This is how it's going to be. And then what happens with those people when change happens? They're like, oh, that emoji, oh, emoji. Right? Because they're not prepared for change. Psychologically, they're not prepared for change. And what does that mean? They're then not ready to act. Because they weren't expecting change to happen. They were just like, well, no, things have changed enough. Surely this is it. Right? You always have to be ready, okay, to change. Ready to make change. Not move against it, right? So repeat that. Always be prepared. Dib, dib. The only security around change is it's always going to happen, right? So if you're not ready for it and you relax or become complacent, when change does happen, because it always does, guaranteed 1,000% of the time. And if you want facts for that, just think about your own previous experience with change. It always happens, right? We can't stop that. However, if we pretend it's not going to happen, we're always left behind, right? In the previous point, not acting, not making change, not doing anything, right? Because we're not prepared for it. So we don't think it's never going to happen. Too late. Okay. 3, love this one. And Kate says it's good. Know what your leverage is. If you need to know what leverage is, I'll give you a brief overview. Essentially, when people say I'm not motivated to do something or I have no reason to do something, always go to your leverage. So what is your leverage? What is your reason to get out of bed? Why did you start your journey in the first place? Why did you want to lose weight? Was it a scare? Was it somebody in your family having a scare? Was it a close relative? Was it birth of a granddaughter, right? Okay, right. What's your leverage? Things are often, and I find this a lot with clients, not all clients, if it's strong enough, it'll pass the test of time. You may know this about yourself as well. You may have started the journey with what you believed at the time to be your leverage. I am getting married. That's a good one, usually. Getting married, probably not the best example for the last year or so. I'm getting married, or I'm turning 50, for example, and I need to be at this weight. Now, this point in time passes, right? Either you turn 50 or the wedding has been postponed, let's say argumentatively. And now you've lost your reason or leverage to be losing weight. You don't replace it. You don't actually dig deep and go, right, actually, what is, if this isn't the reason, what is it really? Now, I think most people will start, most, not all, most people will start with a reason to lose weight that probably isn't painful enough or closer to their heart, really, that's kind of like really, because at the end of the day, they meet us and we're strangers, right? They don't trust us. It's fair dues, right? You don't want to trust your most sensitive and intimate information with a stranger most of the time, I'd imagine. Okay, so that means that sometimes it takes some time in the journey to actually start to either recognize yourself or come to understand what it is that really makes you feel the way that you do about your body, about your confidence levels, whatever it might be. The thing is, it's important to check in that your leverage is up to date, right? So you might be someone that started it with a particular leverage, but is it relevant now? Does it fire your passion? Does it get you out of bed and doing your steps regardless? Does it get you taking action no matter what? Does it get you ready to make change no matter what, how relaxed and things are looking right now? Does it drive you forward? And Kate's got more leverage coming. Basically, Kate, you need to keep this leverage going somehow. And I need, you're going to have a chat with your daughter about how many more she has, but maybe just keep it going. It'd be good. So many kids that you'll be taking bodyboarding, Kate. It'll be a tribe. Next point, okay. Never accept what you're truly happy with. Yeah. This is why I said it's not all of these for everyone, right? Although I think, if I think about the clients I've worked with, there's some point when they've gone, no, I'm not happy with that. Don't compromise with yourself or with your goals. If you get to your goal, say you set out a goal, I don't know, let's just use the same one. Say you get to 50th and you get the weight you want. You have to ask yourself if that's truly what makes you feel comfortable with your body, or a temporary state of happiness using language, right? Or if you're actually honest with yourself, whilst that may have been the reason, are you compromising to not go further and really challenge yourself? I think all too often we have a tendency to accept where we get to because we're too scared to go further forward, because now we're going into unthought about territory. Now we're going into maybe a weight that we've never been before, or a mindset that really has to be challenged, really has to be pushed. And that can be daunting and scary and frightening, and you can overthink it. See where I'm going with this? Right? Compromising with yourself never leads to somebody being truly comfortable about themselves. So to become unstoppable is to say, actually, I'm never actually going to be 100% happy, and that is okay, because actually that means I'll always be moving forwards. I'll always be challenging myself to be better. Not the best, be better. Also talked about that before as well. So, got 2 more points left. Next point. Don't feel the don't fear the consequences of failure. Okay? It will stop you then acting again in the future. Back to point number 1, right? You know some things haven't worked before. If you overthink it and use that as a reason to not do anything now, guess what? That consequence is still coming, right? If you always play safe, you'll never have fun. I think that was a fair point I was making there. If you always play safe, you will accept and compromise on being comfortable. If you don't challenge yourself to not accept and compromise on your own behaviours or your own goals, there's where you'll be, right? So don't fear the consequences of failure. Because, as I said, there's equal and sometimes more impactful consequences of doing nothing, right? And you need to quote it, feel the fear and do it anyway. God, I feel like it's, how many times I've said that in my life? Many times, right? Last point. Don't compete with others. It's an interesting point, and I may or may not do a live on this because I don't know if there's enough material in it to flesh it out. And here's an interesting thing. And who we got on here? Depending on I will go both sides actually, just for the live. So what is interesting, and I can't use my phone. I'm listening to a book by Glennon Doyle at the moment that talks about how we compare to others differently. Hey, Jagruti, between ourselves as women and how male minds think. So I'm going to actually adjust my language to say female minds and male minds, because we could be one gender and have a different mind, right? So what she talks about, and I understand this actually as a woman, and I've probably seen this amongst the friendship group that's completely female at a certain age in teenage years as well. She talks about, she's with a, bear with me this, once upon a time, she talks about she observes her daughter and her son in a room together with their friends, and she said, does anybody want something to eat? And the boys don't even look up from playing the computer game and go, yes. All of them go, yeah. All the girls stay silent and then look at each other and wait for one of them to respond before they decide whether or not it's okay for them to eat something. And it goes by a minute, and one of them, apparently pointing to the book, says, no, we're okay. So answers for all of them. Now what that actually shows is that often as a female-minded person, we may look outside ourselves externally for validation in the choices that we make, that we may or may not be judged for, or we may actually be looking to others to push our standards, right, as a female mind. But what's interesting is that, and I know it's working with male clients as well, they'll look internally and go, this is what I'm going to do or not. Now, what's interesting is that often when we start to compete with people externally, it's the same kind of thought process, I think. We're looking to others for validation that we're actually succeeding or we're moving further based on this imaginary competition we're having with them. Are they better than me? Are they further than me? Should I be at their point? I need to get to where they are. How do I get there? But instead, it's about actually competing with yourself. So actually looking internally and going, actually, how can I become better? How can I become better in what I'm doing? If I focus on my own behaviours and habits, how do I improve on that? All right, it's an interesting thought process. And if you ever find yourself scrolling through Instagram going, oh, I want to be like them, how do I get like them? It exists, because that's still a way of externally looking for validation for where you are. ponder that one, right? So, that is how, collectively, and I'll summarise it, as I always do, how to become unstoppable. So 6 easy steps. They're not easy. None of them are easy. And this is why I say, actually, you may want to think, right, if I want to be unstoppable, if there's nothing going to stop me get to my goal, if I'm an unstoppable force, bulletproof, what does it take, right? It takes this. Don't think, know, and act, right? So know that there's going to be fear. Know you've had previous experience. Don't let that stop you from acting. Because it's consequences of inaction that will bite you in the behind. See, I did it again. I did well. Overthinking. So if you think, rather than knowing, if you think and overthink it, you'll lead to inaction. It'll stop you from moving forwards. It'll stop you in your tracks more than anything else. Always be prepared. Dib, dob, scouts, brownies, whichever one it was. I can't remember now. Because the only thing you can be secure around change is that it will constantly happen. And if you are in a place where you're complacent or relaxed or sure that things aren't going to change, guess what? You're going to be caught out, because change will happen and you're not ready, and you're not ready with a plan, and you need to be acting when other people are relaxing, right? That is what makes you unstoppable. Always being ready for the next change. Know your leverage, right? Know your reasons for doing anything you do, whether it's weight loss, career, whatever it might be, relationship. Know your reasons for doing what you're doing, and if it doesn't fire your passion, if it's changed, it's okay to accept that. What you need to do, though, is understand what it is now, so you can pull on it and use it and drive you forward, and again, become unstoppable. Never accept, right, that you're truly happy unless you genuinely are, although most people are not. So actually accepting that it's okay not to be truly happy with your lot, right? Complacent, accept it. This is all I'm meant to have. I'm not meant to drive myself forward. Don't compromise on your goals because you think you can't push yourself further. Because, tell you what, you always can. If you want to be unstoppable, you don't get to the end and hit a wall and go, I'm done. No. You get better, right? Next, don't fear the consequences of failure. It's about going back to what I said about knowing and acting. Know that there is a risk that you may have a similar experience, that it is also okay. If you play it safe all the time, you will have no fun, right? You will stay where you are, right? Don't fear the consequences of failure. Again, there's also a consequence of not acting, which may be equally, if not more painful, in my experience. And lastly, don't compete with others. Don't look for external validation that you are progressing. Look within yourself for internal validation that you are getting better at what you're focusing on for you, rather than competing with people outside yourself. Because I think, in honesty, in my experience, you'll always end up losing, because you'll always find someone else to replace that person that's further ahead, right? That's the truth. So there you go. That is how to become completely unstoppable, bulletproof, always going to get every goal regardless, right? And what's interesting is that none of this, I think, is about being selfish, bloody-minded, uncompromising, or putting yourself ahead of everybody else at any cost. Actually, all of this is about knowing your own thoughts, behaviors, reactions, understanding them, accepting them, knowing what's in, right? I said knowing what's in your influence, right? And what isn't. So letting go of what you cannot control because it's not within your sphere of influence, and focusing on what you can actually achieve and what can be pushed forward by you, right? Those are great tools of how to become unstoppable. I think I've lived by most of them, I think, actually, at some point. So I've used these. And I think if you look at some really successful people, you'll probably find and recognise those in your life as well, probably on some of this. And it isn't because they're doing something magical or they're more driven or more motivated. In fact, it's just knowing those skills and using them, right? Like any muscle, flexing, right? Flexing a bicep, flexing some of this will make you more and more unstoppable as you use it. So, Wednesday the 17th, we'll be doing activity versus training, and then Thursday, talking about seasonal weight loss and what the heck is that and why that happens, because you might know this as well. Things are just about to change seasons. So, as always, if you have any comments or thought processes or any questions, etc., please hit me up in direct message or comments on this on Instagram and Facebook, and I will catch you Wednesday.